If you're an auto racing fan that follows American racing series like NASCAR, IMSA, and Moto America, then you definitely understand how big of a deal the Daytona International Speedway is. The World Center of Racing that plays host to the Daytona 200 for Moto America, the Rolex 24 for IMSA, and the Daytona 500 for NASCAR. It's a racetrack that every race fan needs to visit, not to only experience these crown jewel races, but also because the facility is top of the line. It's been transformed to a motorsports stadium when $400 million was put into Daytona to make it what it is today. Just about every site is stunning from the moment you arrive standing by the outside entrance. You're greeted to so much from the Daytona Hall of Fame Museum, many places to chill out at, many stores, food courts, merchandise stores. Hell, forget walking up the stairs, you got escalators and elevators to make it easy navigating the stadium. You then walk out to the track to get seated, and you see this breathtaking view of the front stretch. It's beautiful, isn't it? Just about all around Daytona looks aesthetically pleasing until you get to the backstretch.
Oh my goodness!
Just take a good hard look at this. This is currently how the Daytona backstretch looks. Now let's flash back to 20 years ago, and well, there's obviously a big difference here. The grandstands and grass that was once there has been stripped away, and now the backstretch looks dead. It looks depressing, and I don't like it. Why the hell were these two things eviscerated from the Daytona backstretch? Well, I'm gonna dive into that, but before I do, you may be wondering, why am I addressing solely Daytona when other tracks have fallen victim to the same thing over the years? Because it's freaking Daytona. Imagine if the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is a facility on par with Daytona, got rid of their grandstands in turn 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and it was just the front stretch grandstands, plus if they got rid of the grass and it was just paved all around. That would look even worse than Daytona. These tracks wouldn't have that grand look to it anymore. These are supposed to be top of the line venues, and while yes, the on-track product needs to deliver and you need to have a lot of amenities to really satisfy the fans, you also want these places to have that aesthetically pleasing look to them. It sucks to see this happen to any track, but Daytona and Indianapolis Motor Speedway are tracks you just don't touch no matter what because they're prestigious and top of the line. But that's just me. The grandstands on the backstretch were the first to go at Daytona, so let's dive into that. In 1959, it was time to get away from the beach and onto the pavement as Bill France Sr. vision came to life. The 2.5 mile speedway was ready to see stock cars achieve high speeds at this superspeedway, and over 40,000 lucky spectators got to experience a race that has gone on to become the biggest crown jewel in NASCAR, the Daytona 500. Everyone is seated on the front stretch, meanwhile on the backstretch, it was nothing there, and it remained that way for a while. As the Daytona 500 continued to grow, more people showed up, which means you had seats being added. But it was nothing significant until the late 1970s. When you go back and watch the 1979 Daytona 500, you'll notice that there are seats over near turn 3. And it wasn't much, but the option was there if fans wanted to sit on the backstretch. As the years went by, the front stretch continued to expand as the backstretch remained untouched until 1994. NASCAR was really starting to gain traction and popularity around this time, which means more and more people wanted to attend races. Seating capacity for many tracks continued to grow, and Daytona was no exception. Replacing the tiny grandstands near turn 3 at Daytona was backstretch grandstands right off turn 2, nicknamed the Super Stretch Grandstands. And yeah, it didn't look like much when they were first built, but Daytona continued to expand the backstretch grandstands, and by the 2000s, they were massive. And when you combine the front stretch and backstretch grandstands, the seating capacity at Daytona International Speedway peaked roughly around 150,000. NASCAR was absolutely booming during the 2000s, and it was just a great time period to be a fan. Unfortunately, that didn't last. Into the 2010s, NASCAR started to experience a drop-off in popularity, which means all of those seats that were built during the boom period were vacated. It's not the best look, so with that, lots of tracks made a decision to remove a ton of seats. Even the track that hosts the biggest race of the year came to this decision as well. And when you look at the Daytona 500 during that time period where the sport was losing its popularity, the Daytona 500 still looked pretty full all the way to the last year where they had backstretch grandstands. If they weren't selling out, they weren't that far off from it. It's hard to know the attendance numbers for those races after 2011 because NASCAR stopped releasing attendance numbers to the public along with purse money as well. The summer night race at Daytona was a completely different story. You could just see with the naked eye that attendance was down for this event. The Backstretch grandstands look deserted. 2015 would be the last year of the Backstretch grandstands existing. I mentioned earlier about how $400 million went into a project called Daytona Rising, where Daytona International Speedway was going to get renovated. And it was a great thing for the Speedway, but it came at the expense of the Backstretch grandstands. Did they really have to remove them? I don't think so. The Daytona 500 was still damn near filling up those grandstands. Now, with that being said, that was during a time where superstars like Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Tony Stewart were still racing in the Cup Series. I definitely think we would have continued to see a drop off, and it would have became noticeable after those guys stepped away. In my opinion, here's what they should have done. They could have tore down half of the Backstretch grandstands and have to be the size of what it was like back in 1994 when they first built them. I just think it was unnecessary to tear those grandstands down completely when they were still filling up even during NASCAR's drop off period. I heard mixed reviews about the Backstretch grandstands at Daytona. Some loved it while some didn't like sitting back there. Maybe they could have improved the viewing experience back there with the renovations. With those grandstands being gone, Daytona seating capacity has dropped to 101,000, which is still a lot, but that's a big drop off from what they used to seat. Hopefully someday they decide to rebuild the Backstretch grandstands, because I think it would make Daytona International Speedway look more grand than it already does. I now want to transition to talking about something else that was also removed from the backstretch at Daytona, and that's the grass. I don't want anybody giving me crap for my disappointment of grass being gone on the Daytona backstretch, because something I hear every year from fans is them wanting NASCAR to run Sonoma in the early spring because of how the grass really makes the track look aesthetically pleasing. But unfortunately, we don't end up getting that. Anyway, from the moment Daytona was built, it was grass back there, and it covered the entire backstretch. But with bad crashes over the years, that began to change. We seen drivers tumble through the grass and hell, sometimes crash into Lake Lloyd before they had a wall back there. Grass is not necessarily the reason we see a car take lift off, but it is the reason why we see cars tumble, because the car is digging into the grass. As violent as it looks, drivers have said that barrel rolling isn't as bad as running head onto a wall. Over the years, we've seen some pretty nasty flips down the backstretch of Daytona. Rusty Wallace in 1993, Tony Stewart in 2001, and Michael Watcher in 2004. And as we've seen over the years, more and more grass was being removed from the backstretch, most likely because of those flips. But in 2024, we've seen a flip that will lead to a big change, and it's all because of this nasty wreck from Ryan Preece in the 2024 Daytona night race. Thankfully, Ryan Preece was alright and went on to race the very next week. Besides having bloodshot eyes, he wasn't injured. But after that severe looking wreck, Daytona basically said,
Grass!
Yep, they stripped away all of the grass on the backstretch and now it looks deserted. Fans took notice to this during the 2025 Rolex 24 race, and while yes, it's not the end of the world, it was odd seeing nothing but pavement back there after seeing grass on the backstretch for many years. It was such a heavy topic of discussion from fans that Daytona president Frank Keller had to speak on it, and just from his response, they don't seem to be in a rush to address it. But at least they're going to look into it down the road. But what is Daytona gonna do? The best solution is putting down turf. Yes, it's super expensive, but they can afford it. We've seen how much better turf is because Charlotte Motor Speedway has it, and we've seen drivers go through the turf at that track and it doesn't tear up race cars. Also, turf is supposed to slow the cars down in a quicker way than grass. But does it prevent the cars from flipping? Well, we've seen Chris Buescher flip in the 2022 Coca-Cola 600, but it wasn't the turf that caused him to flip. Instead, the right front tire got underneath the car, which launched the car, and then it proceeded to flip. It was one of those freak accidents. The turf got put down at Charlotte Motor Speedway in 2018, and we've seen plenty of cars slide across it and not dig into it like what we've seen with grass. Turf is probably the best thing to go with instead of leaving the backstretch looking naked until further notice. I'm surprised NASCAR and ISC never bothered to implement this at other racetracks, because over the years we've seen tracks remove grass, leaving them looking pretty bland. Tyler Reddick flipped in the fall Vegas race in 2024 on the front stretch. What they go do, get rid of grass there too and leave the track looking ugly? I will hope not. Put turf down everywhere, especially at Daytona, and we'll be good to go. I know a video like this may seem a little silly to some people and they'll probably come away rolling their eyes because I'm talking about a section of a racetrack that doesn't have that aesthetically pleasing look that the rest of the racetrack has, but it's pretty noticeable. And once again, a top of the line facility like Daytona International Speedway has it all. And I'm not saying just because the backstretch has this deserted look to it means that it's not worth going to this racetrack. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the backstretch not having any grandstands and grass makes it look like it's under construction or something. It looks incomplete. So what happens to the Daytona backstretch going forward? I think they'll realize that turf will be the best thing to go with to give that area of the track some of its attraction back. I'm not saying they'll cover the whole backstretch with turf, but they'll cover most of it, and I think they would get that done in the next couple of years, maybe sooner than that. As for the grandstands, I think it's going to remain as it is for quite a while unless NASCAR experiences another boom in popularity. Then yeah, I can see them rebuilding grandstands back there. And like I said, even with NASCAR being niche, they can get away with having some grandstands back there. But we'll just have to see what happens going forward. Outside of that one negative part of Daytona, it's a racetrack that should be on everyone's bucket list to attend, and a racetrack that every race car driver wants to race on at some point in their career. Hopefully one day Daytona can have that beautiful complete look to it again, all around, because man, it's Daytona and you want a racetrack like that to check all of the boxes no matter what it is. So what's your thoughts on Daytona's backstretch? Should they rebuild the grandstands back there? Have you ever sat in the backstretch grandstands? Do you agree that they should put turf down? Does the current look of Daytona's backstretch even bother you? Hit up that comment section, and like always, I'll be checking out what y'all have to say. I'm gonna go ahead and roll up out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.